Again, fellow hobbyists, collectors, and pro heads alike, I'm your host, Glenn Taylor, and I'm with a special guest. And I'm sorry, who are you again?
Hi, I'm Jim Shooter.
Now, Jim Shooter, of course, is in fact an editor-in-chief over at Marvel, and he's worked on several comics. What is the most notable comic book that you've worked on?
Wow, most notable?
Yeah.
That's hard to say. I mean, I was editor-in-chief of Marvel, and I worked on pretty much everything we did. I started Valiant, did Harbinger and Exo and Magnus and Solar and lots of other ones, Archer and Armstrong. And I don't know, I did so many. It's like, who's your favorite child? I mean, I don't know.
That's true. I can understand that. Now, of course, if yesterday we were speaking about, and majority of the times when a collector looks at you as far as an artist, oh, he did Secret Wars, is what you said yesterday. So why Secret Wars do you think would be the most notable one that you come up with your name?
Well, I don't remember how the question was phrased, but that's the one most people would know. I figured that's the one that people would come up early in the conversation. I mean, my favorite story sequence I did probably was Harbinger number 1 through 7, which was with artist David Lapham, who's a genius, and it was such a pleasure working with him. And he was one of those guys who he'd give you everything you asked for, and then little touches to make it even better.
So he's like George kind of guy that went beyond and above.
Yeah, like George Perez or Don Perlin. I mean, he understood what you wanted. He gave you everything you wanted, and then he'd find little touches to put in that an expression of somebody in the background, or just a gesture or whatever.
That's where artists, in my opinion, when I see a comic book, you know who it is when they do it, and I actually do like that a lot, because I actually do collect original comic book artwork. I have about 32 pages for you at home. You already know that. So I do like collecting original art, and you can see the differences between each artist that does it. And I really do like that a lot.
Yeah, and I like the artists who understand acting. I mean, some artists, a few, they have like 3 expressions. Like swearing vengeance, and in pain, and they only have a couple of tricks in their bag. But guys like that I mentioned before. And Barry Windsor-Smith. I mean, they can convey emotion, and they can make you feel it, and that's like gold. That's wonderful.
Yeah, it's one thing to definitely draw something, whether it be an action or a pose, but you still have to convey a sense of emotion or sensibility regarding why this character is the way it is. Even if it's in 2-dimensional space, you still have to act as though, okay, why is this person going through pain or anguish? So that's what I really liked about you as an editor or even a writer. Now, for those of you at home, most of you know Jim Shooter for both DC and you said editor in Marvel, but one thing he did write, or co-wrote actually, was Predator versus Magnus Robot Fighter.
Right.
How did that come about, if I may ask?
Well, I knew Mike Richardson, who was the founder and principal of Dark Horse for years, and he had the rights to Predator. And Valiant, my company, we had the rights to Magnus, Solar, the Gold Key characters.
Right.
Mike was a huge fan of the Gold Key characters, and he liked what I was doing with them. And I ran into him, I guess, at a convention. Probably went for coffee someplace, and we started talking. And I think he was the one who proposed we do a crossover. And I thought, well, that's a great idea. Why not? And I was writing almost everything for Valiant in those days. If I didn't write it, I probably rewrote it or touched it up at least. And I really wanted to do this right, and so I decided, okay, I'll write it, because I know I'll do the research, I'll get it right, I'll make it interesting, and so I did a plot. For the two-issue series, and right about that time, I was forced out of Valiant by evil partners who, were too long a story to tell.
Too many hands in the cookie jar, apparently.
Yeah, well, my partner married the banker. And you tell that to somebody who's in the financial trades, and they say no more. We get it, fine.
Actually, I think you mentioned to me yesterday that was in a Forbes magazine.
Yeah, the Forbes magazine did an article about that called "How Not to Start a Company, or What Do You Do When Your Partner Starts Sleeping with the Banker."
Ethics and morality in business.
Business ethics. That's an oxymoron. But at any rate, I did the plots, and I'm not sure how much of the first story I did, or if I did the whole thing. I mean, the script, the dialogue. I don't know how much of that I did, or whether the plot was just very detailed. But at any rate, I built the foundation. I think somebody else finished the story, and I haven't read it. I just
really?
No, I've never read it because as I was working on that story, that's when the bad guys were trying to get rid of me, and so and succeeded. So that was a bad time. I've just never revisited it. I would have loved to have done that story, and I hope whoever did it did a good job.
They did actually a good job, because usually when I was mentioning from yesterday, to introduce a crossover like Valiant and Predator, usually you have to have some kind of some foundation there laid as to why these two characters meet for the first time.
Right.
So I do like the story. If you haven't read the story, I highly recommend it. Now, there were 3 different issues. There was issue 1 and issue 2, but were you aware there was also a platinum edition of the first issue?
I was not aware of that. I've never
so
seen
basically, it's the same cover, but there was much more of a silverish, metallic, sheen to it.
Okay.
So you had the platinum edition, which was more higher value than the regular 1 and 2.
Yeah.
So there was 3 issues, 1, 2 of that variant cover, and then issue 2. So I do have all 3 issues.
Oh, cool.
So yeah, I want to thank you very much for signing a copy of mine yesterday.
My pleasure.
I got that graded, that'll be sent off. So I think as far as your work, do you prefer more of the writing aspect, the editorial? Which one do you rather do more as a professional comics?
It depends on the situation. I mean, when I was at Marvel, I did some writing. I designed characters and covers and things, and did a lot of work with the various editors. But I had great editors, and so I could leave a lot of it to them. You didn't have to tell Larry Hama anything,
Right.
And if you did, he'd get cranky with you.
So you can't micromanage.
Right.
Yeah.
You didn't have to tell Louise Simons.
See, me
much.
personally, I hate it when somebody micromanages. Like,
Right.
let me do my
But
work.
I had the greatest people in the world. I had Archie Goodwin, maybe the best ever,
Yeah.
and I had Denny O'Neill. I mean, I had these
Denny O'Neill's really good.
people, and then we've got some younger people, and when we they worked with the older people and learned their craft. So then we had Ann Nocenti and Bob Budiansky and Carl Potts, who turned out to be great. So what I at Marvel was more like conducting the orchestra, and
Right.
at my subsequent companies, Valiant, where like I said, I wrote almost everything, including the ads and the promo copy and the solicitations and everything else you got. Almost all of it. So I was the machine that made the product.
Right.
Right, and also, I mean, I was art directing the artists and the colorists and everybody. So I was the machine that made the product.
That makes sense, especially since you've owned the company.
Yeah.
You want to make sure that everything comes out good.
Well, and also we didn't have any money to hire anybody, so if I didn't do it, it wouldn't get done. That's
True.
why I actually drew a couple stories, because couldn't find an artist that we could afford. Everybody that we could afford was busy a couple of times,
Right.
and so I would draw it. I'm not a great artist, but I can tell the story. I can storyboard it,
Right.
and lay it out reasonably okay. And then if you have a really good inker, like Bob Layton, for instance, at Valiant, I did this at Marvel a couple times too, and I had like inkers like Jim Mooney. If you have somebody like that who can fix your little mistakes, then it's that's that you can get away with it. I signed. I used the pseudonym Paul Kredick. So if you see the name Paul Kredick on something, I did some covers.
Okay.
I did some a couple of interiors. The only thing is there was a mistake. We had the credits put in by the printer on the first issue of Rye, the flip book, and they put the wrong credits on the Rye story. They said Paul Kredick, and it was actually David Lapham.
Okay.
And he was very disappointed because that was his first superhero work, and he expected to see his name there. And in a way, it was the printer's fault because they stripped in the wrong credits. We told them what the credits were.
Right.
But
they were so used to doing this way, they accidentally did it.
Yeah, but they accidentally used the Paul Kredick credit, and in a way, it was my fault because that book kind of went down to the wire. We were always on time. We never missed a deadline, but because it went down to the wire, we sent the book off to the printer without the credits, called them up and said, "This is what we wanted to say. Strip it in," and because they can do that, you know. And so they were happy to do it. They just did it wrong.
Oh,
so if the book hadn't been down to the wire, which I guess is my fault, we probably would have gotten it right. But you know, David Lapham was a man. He got over it, you know, and he did plenty more. So his name's everywhere.
Now, those of you at home, if you don't know who Bob Layton is the man responsible for bringing back Iron Man. He also did a few other things. He was the editor in Magnus Robot Fighter vs. Predator. I actually met him at Fan Fusion back in 2014, actually. Great guy. He's actually really down to earth, and I thought he was a very sweet guy. He's always been that way?
No, he was part of he got paid off by the people who stole Valiant from me, and he stabbed me in the back, and he got paid quite a bit of money for it, you know, and when they did this, they needed him to sort of run the bullpen, the office. They brought in, they made Barry Windsor-Smith the president so they'd have a big name like me. I'm supposedly a big name.
Right.
But they wanted to have a big name figurehead. They brought Barry in for that. They eventually let him go because they didn't need him anymore. And they also paid off John Hartz, the marketing guy, to stay. Quite a bit of money. I mean, we're talking six figures and more than that.
See, normally as a fan, that I didn't know that actually until.
Well, how would you? Yeah. But read the Forbes article. But at any rate, which I'm so glad they did that because it codified it, and it's Forbes. They're not telling my side. They did their research. They fact checked. They did it whatever they could. But at any rate, no. So I have not a whole lot of respect for Bob. He basically, you know, sold me out to the bad guys.
That's very unfortunate.
Yeah, and P.S. on Valiant, when we were struggling at the beginning, we had the people who were funding us before we were really sort of February '92 is where we really started making money. But up until then, and even after then, the people who were funding us, they wanted to cut the costs to the bone because we were losing money.
Right.
And they wanted me to like fire a whole bunch of staff people, including Bob Layton. And he was an inker, but he actually sort of took the job of organizing the lettering, paste up people, which he was very good. He was very good at that. Originally I had wanted Don Perlin to do that, but Don would rather sit at the drawing board and do art. And Bob did a lot of inking, but he also, you know, sort of ran the bullpen. But at any rate, they wanted me to cut down the staff, and I said I can't do that because you need a certain critical mass. You have to have a marketing guy. You have to have production people. You know, you can't just say, oh, we'll take it down to 4 people and you can do everything. No, you can't. You know, if you're a little indie publisher, maybe because you're not dependent on venture capital money.
Right.
You know,
not only that, I think more in comic books, there's more of a specialized.
Well, you needed a certain critical mass.
Yeah.
So the deal they offered me was, all right, if we assign a value to everything people do, and they earn enough money to make their quota, in other words, to pay for themselves.
Right.
Okay. And the thing is that they assign no value to anything like managing the bullpen, right? Nothing. So the only things that had values were actual things that you would usually be freelance, writing, penciling, inking, lettering, coloring, and then I convinced them that no, editing would also be, you know, something.
Right.
Now, I was writing everything, and I was editing everything, and I was, you know, managing a lot of the stuff and doing the business, you know, and working on the marketing, and you know, I was the CEO, and I was doing a lot of stuff. I was putting in so many hours that even though I was the highest paid person there, I was beating my quota by more than double. Okay.
Nice.
In other words, I was paying for myself and then paying again. So The guy who was the venture capitalist spy at our place, they put a financial guy in just to sort of keep track of us. Oh. He wasn't a bad guy, and he said, I said, you know, and every month Bob Layton would fall short, J.J. Jackson would fall short, sometimes Jade Mady, Don Perlin even, they would fall short of their quota because a lot of stuff they did wasn't, didn't count. Right. So what the financial guy was, you know, I have to respect this. He was nice about it. He allowed me to take some of my overage and cover the other people's quotas.
Okay.
And so when you see credits like editor J.J. Jackson, she never edited anything. But I gave her editorial credit so that they wouldn't fire her. And same with Layton. And
That's awesome.
And the same with Jade Mady and even Don sometimes. Don usually, he was industrious. He usually made his numbers. But that's why you'll see credits at value that don't make a whole lot of sense.
Right.
You know, but you know, it's like somebody needs some more money on their quota. Okay, you edited Rye. You know. So.
In this case, well, Jim, I think that actually speaks about volumes regarding your character. I think that's really awesome of you to do that. Now, just in curiosity, where can fans of your artwork find you? Are you on social media by any chance?
I have a Facebook page that I've never actually visited because I used to do a blog, jimshooter.com, easy to remember.
Okay.
And it's still up there. I haven't worked on it for a couple years because I've had other things to do. But right now I have a technical expert sort of reconfiguring it a little bit, putting it in a better order, making it easier to use. And the old version is still up there, but it'll soon be replaced by a more user-friendly version, same content. Okay. There's, I don't know, hundreds of articles that I wrote, lots with pictures and photos and old letters and, you know, artifacts. Like I have my show and tell here, which I bring to conventions.
Yeah, I think this is awesome.
This sort of thing, and also things like my time at Marvel and some things that I learned, things I was taught about writing, drawing, and so forth. It's the wisdom of the ancients that I pass on to anybody who wants to do creative work. So it's still up there. The blog is there, jimshooter.com, and I'm just about to start working on it again because it's going to all be organized better and it'll be easier for me to do it.
I think also I found you on Twitter. I think you have a Twitter account.
Again, so the lady who used to, I would write the blog, but the person who actually did the technical part, posting it and stuff, which was above my pay grade, she insisted that we had to have a Twitter account and a Facebook page. And she took care of all that.
Okay.
You know, to promote the blog.
Right.
She took care of all that. It's like I say, I don't think I've been to my Facebook page maybe a few times. I don't know, and I never have done any tweeting. But maybe I should learn how. I guess I don't know. But the blog is still there, and that's good. And I also work for a company called Illustrated Media, illustratedmedia.com. That
sounds familiar.
Yeah, and they also they're having a new website built, and so some of my work will be represented on the website. And mail can get to me through the website or the blog.
Fantastic. Well, once again, Jim Shooter, I greatly appreciate it, sir.
My pleasure.
Thank you very much. So again, I will leave all those links again down in the description below. So whenever you get those updated, we'd love to hear more about you and your work. So we definitely love the fact that you've done a lot of things for both Marvel and DC, believe it or not. So we just want to see more work from you. So we really appreciate it.
I'm working on it.
Yeah. Okay. Again, keep it right here, guys. Click on the subscribe button as well as the bell notification for more interviews this week here at Huntsville Comic Book and Pop Culture Expo. And again, thank you very much, Mr. Shooter.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
All right.